All right, everybody, just got back from Atlanta on a little trip, seeing some friends, picking up a new little toy. Let's check it out. All right, everybody, before we get started, I just want to give a huge shout out to everyone over at MTL Attachments. They've been awesome to me, and I would not be here today in my business and doing what I'm doing and doing YouTube and running my business and being as productive as I am without that company, their products, their support that they've shown me since I bought my first my XC8-T and the Grapple back in 2018. And just want to give a huge shout out to everybody over there, the owner Cliff, who's been awesome, Tyler, who when I went over there to get the XC8, he actually put everything together for me, and I was there for like 2 hours while they were putting it all together, and they answered all my questions and gave me a whole bunch of cool info on it, and I was able to give them some feedback on some things. And it's just been awesome, my relationship with them and the support that they've shown me, and their products just work. And the one thing that has really impressed me is that they strive to make a better product. The XC8-T that I bought in 2018 has the improvements that they've made since then have just been night and day. They really care about putting the best product forward that they can and making improvements and making the best product that they can. So people like me who use them, especially for work and stuff, can be productive, be successful, and leave a good product for our clients. So thank you for everybody over there. Thank you for all that you've done. And I really appreciate all your support, and hopefully a lot more videos in the future with all this cool stuff that we're doing with this stuff. So if you guys have any questions about anything, just let me know, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. All right, so this is the brand new 2021 MTL XC8-T, and this thing is a monster. I haven't run it yet, other than I just hooked it up, spun it up a little bit, just get the air out of the lines and everything, and make sure everything worked good, no leaks and everything, and then I kind of washed it down. And this thing's crazy, y'all. All right, so this is a completely different animal than my older XC8-T sitting over there. And if you guys go back to the prior video, the one I did just before this, I got a new flywheel for that, but I also got this thing too. So the big differences on this thing, the biggest difference, the absolute #1 biggest difference with this thing is the weight. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, it's not a bigger cut. This is still a 72-inch cut. The XC8-T is a 72-inch cut as well. They're both about 80 inches wide overall, but this one is just built a lot more sturdy and a lot more heavy duty. There's a little bit more metal in the construction, and it is a complete 4-blade round flywheel design. So the older one is a 3-blade design, and so in between the blades, the flywheel has these big curves where there's a lot of reduction in the metal of the flywheel. This is a big round double-plated flywheel. The blades are roughly the same in size and everything, but still pretty much same size blades, but just a lot bigger flywheel. So there's a lot more weight that you're carrying underneath here. Just from spinning this thing up, it seems like it doesn't quite spin as fast, but it does have a whole lot more weight and inertia behind it. So I'll get into that for a minute, but we'll walk around a little bit, get you guys a good look at it. So now, kind of like don't even know where to start with this thing. So they make this thing in 3 different sizes. You can get one with a 60-inch cut, 72-inch cut, and a 78-inch cut. And this is the 72, and I can tell you right now, this is a 329E John Deere. This is the second biggest machine that John Deere makes. It's just a hair smaller than the 333 models, whether it be a D, E, or the newer G. This thing, depending on the counterweight options in the back, this thing doesn't weigh but maybe 200 or 300 pounds lighter than the 333G. And I can tell there's a huge difference in the weight on the front of this thing. They told me that with the way this thing sticks out like this, the leverage on this to the machine, not actual weight, but the leverage pulling on the machine is the equivalent of picking up like a 3,000 pound pallet of blocks or something like that, because of the weight, or you know, because of how far it sticks out and the leverage on the machine. So this thing's got a lot of weight, and it's definitely gonna, whatever size you go with, it's gonna change sort of the balance of your machine and how it handles. I can tell just from driving it around a little bit here from over to the water hose and back, that it's just a totally different animal with the weight and the balance of the machine. So that's going to take a little getting used to. Second thing is, unlike the XC8-T that I have, and even the newer model XC8-Ts, the back of this thing is completely enclosed. So there's no open back. So when you're cutting, there's no way for any material to come out the back. And the reason for that is because the XC7s and the XC8-Ts have that open back. And they're designed to, as you're mowing along, in straight line mowing, if you were doing mowing or bush hogging work, type of work, have all that material that's cut and processed come out the back, and it doesn't get bound up or clogged up in the cutter. This thing is not designed to do that. If you're looking to get something that does more bush hogging and mowing work, this XC8 is not the thing that you want. This is basically the closest thing in a rotary cutter that you can get to a actual drum or rotary mulcher. It's about the closest thing you can get. It's designed for heavy brush to go in, cut things down, and then back up, process it, go forward, cut stuff down, back up, process it, and keep moving forward. It's not designed for just straight line mowing, continuous forward movement. So if you're looking at getting one of these things, and you're going to be doing a lot of mowing and bush hogging, this is not going to be what you want. But if you're doing a lot of heavy brush cutting, larger material, larger size material, larger diameter material, thicker material, this is your baby right here. So you can get this with they have several different motor options. You can get it in a direct drive or a piston drive. And the thing you need to know about those two big things is that if you have a high flow machine, like this is high flow, and it has the inflow, outflow, and a case drain, you can run the piston motor. The piston motors have to have this third case drain line. Basically what this case drain line is basically a return to tank line, where if the pump in there, the motor, gets too much pressure built up into it, this is basically a pressure relief line that will take that excess oil that's under pressure back to the tank, and it won't let it build up inside the motor. If you do not have something that has this third line with a high flow, you're going to need to get a direct drive motor. If you have high flow, you can actually run direct drive, or you can run the piston drive. But if you have something without high flow that doesn't have this case drain, you're going to have to go with direct drive. So you can get both. You can run this on a what they call low flow or a standard flow skid steer. You can run it on both. It just depends on what motor option that you want to go with, or that you basically kind of have to have. So that's kind of how this thing runs. The motor, the motor in this thing is massive. I mean, it is absolutely, and I don't know if you guys, I'll try to stick the GoPro in there. There we go. The motor is huge. It looks like it's like half as, at least like 1.5 times bigger than the motor that's on the XC8-T that I have. It's just huge. Now, and I think you can get these same motors now on the upgraded XC8-Ts and XC7s. My older one, they didn't have this motor when I got mine back in 2018. They didn't have these upgraded motors. If you're running a 100 to 120 horsepower machine that's putting out 40 to 45 gallons of flow, they've got these motors that can handle up to 45 gallons of flow. So if you're running a ASV RT120, if you're running a Cat 299 or a Takeuchi TL12, whatever you got, if it's running that 100 plus horsepower and putting out that 40 to 45 gallons of flow, they've got a motor that can handle it. So whatever you need, I mean, it'll pretty much handle anything up to basically a dedicated unit for the most part. So any size skid steer they can handle. But for these machines, I mean, even a 60-inch cut on this, I mean, this thing is heavy. It would be heavy for something like a 259D. I'm sure it would work, but I would wonder about the balance on it. So if anybody has one of the smaller machines, I'd like to know how maybe like a 60-inch cut would do on that. So couple of upgrades on this thing over the XC8-T that I like, which is a totally different design. But my XC8-T has these little side splash guards right here. And one thing that they did was upgrade the thickness of the metal of these. The older XC8-T that I have had these, and they were very thin, and mine are kind of bent and beat up. And these are much more heavy duty. They're much thicker, and they're also easily replaceable. These are replaceable. These kind of like a skid shoe here. They just unbolt, and you can just easily replace them. Or if you need to, unweld, cut this off and weld a new piece of metal onto this. Whatever you got to do, they're a lot easier. My older XC8-T is just one piece that comes down and is folded over. So that's kind of be a pain to fix. I do need to fix that and have a metal shop kind of add a piece of like a thicker 3/8 inch steel or something like that, 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch steel on top of it to kind of buff that up a little bit or beef it up a little bit. So still with this same kind of little bit of a different front guard, more visibility with this tubular steel. But the hooks on the side, you still got these big hooks on the side for kind of grabbing material, just like on my older XC8-T. What else? The hose routing is completely different now. They really upgraded the hose routing where it kind of comes through, and then it has this little block here where the hoses are static. They're not just hanging and free floating like my XC8-T has that problem. They're mounted here, and you can shorten them if you need to a little bit. This seems to be okay. They kind of stick out a little bit. They could use a shorten, but I might try to kind of reroute them a little bit. I just actually went to John Deere. This head, this female outflow head, you can see the oil leaking down, and then this K-string line is the worst. These are leaking, especially this one. So I just went and picked up all 3 new heads for these. So these are going to be getting changed out. They're about 2 years old, and they're getting worn out. Something that just happens when you use attachments a lot, especially higher flow stuff. This stuff kind of hangs here and it just wears on these couplers. If you check out John with Upstate Brush Control, he had a video recently where they upgraded the ASVs that he had with, like, I can't remember the name. It's like Stauchy or something like that. It's I think it's a European brand, where they redo these. They're not like these quick connects. They're more of like a screw-on type of deal, I guess, and they're supposed to be a lot better about leaking and last a lot longer, but they're not quite as quick for attaching and unattaching like these are. So if you're kind of switching back and forth attachments a lot, they're probably not the best to go with. But if you're just doing one thing all day long, like John mostly just, from what I can tell his videos, they just mostly forestry mulch, all day, every day, with those machines, that would be something nice to have. So I'm all over the place. I use this, I use the bucket, I have the grapple, the forks. I'm kind of all over the place with whatever. I've got a job coming up next week where I'm going to need the bucket, so I'm going to deal with that. So it's kind of a pain. Those things are expensive. I picked up this one and 2 gallons of oil, and it was like almost $700. So John Deere is great, but when you want their parts, you pay for it. So, but I do love John Deere, and I do like my dealer. They've been good, even though I actually didn't buy this machine from them, but that's neither here nor there. Let's look at all the goodies up underneath here. So same blades, same size blades as the other one. Now these are the AR400 blades. The newer XC8-T Flywheel that I had them put the Stingray blades on, and they offered to put the Stingray on this one, but I said no, leave the AR400. I want to see how they wear compared to the Stingray. So now I've kind of got a good comparison now to see how these wear versus the Stingray blades. And I actually talked to them about the sharpening of that, and they said it's actually a good idea because I hadn't sharpened those, because they got a little bit of a blunt edge on the Stingray blades, to go ahead and maybe take the grinder down. They recommend taking the grinder down both sides one pass just to give them a little bit of an edge. But these come pretty much pre-sharpened. They're ready to go. And the front has an edge on it too. The Stingray blades don't have this front edge, and this is nice. So as you're going forward, as this thing is turning through, you know, coming forward, this front edge is actually cutting too, which is really nice. This Flywheel also does not have the hockey puck style on it, but it can be upgraded to the hockey puck style. I'm probably going to do that in the future, but I told them just to leave it for now. That's fine. It's not a huge deal to me. Mulching teeth, more mulching teeth. So the new XC8-T Flywheel has 18. I actually miscounted that in my last video. I said 16, but it's actually 18. This one has 6 times 4. It's 24 if my math is correct. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but yeah, it's got 24 mulching teeth on it. And one other thing here, you'll see these 2 bolt holes right here. I'm sure. So what this is here on the older XC, they had what was called an XC8. And the XC8s had the blades. They did not have these mulching teeth, but they had a stump grinder tooth right here that stuck out like this. So as this thing was turning, it was like one of those round stump grinder teeth. So as this thing came along, those stump grinder teeth would kind of grind up stuff on the ground. But they actually ended up adding the teeth to it. But if you want the teeth and the stump grinder tooth, you can do that as well. And I might actually end up adding those things on here too, just to give it a little more mulching capacity. But we'll see, time will tell. And so, completely round Flywheel. The carrier case at the bottom is massive. You can see how the bolts are spread a lot more round than on the XC8-T that I have. This one is just a lot bigger round. The drive shaft is a 5-inch taper drive shaft. It's a much bigger drive shaft. And the motors, these piston motors, put out 30% more torque than my older motor. So a lot more torque. Like I said, I don't think it spins quite as fast, but you've got a lot more torque that this thing has to kind of push through bigger, heavier material. They rate this thing for 8-inch material, and they've had people call them and tell them they've done 10-inch. So it's got some power. Got the studs in there for the barbed wire protectors too, so you got protection there, just like on the newer Flywheel for the XC8-T that I have. And then here's another cool little thing. You've got this right here. This is how you access your teeth to change them out. You just unbolt these 3 little bolts, and then there's a hole there, and then you can get to the nuts on the underside of the teeth there. You can see it right there. So that'll allow you to easily change out the teeth. And then one of these, either this one or the one on the other side, is how you get to these bolts if you need to as well. Though the way they're in here now, they're pretty easy to get to. You can just lock a wrench onto that and then just unbolt it. But if you need to, I think, yeah, there it is. There's an access port over there on both sides to get to those if you need be. So that's kind of that. I have not cut anything with this thing. I've not used it. And so, but I found a little pine tree. I think we can go back here in the back and cut down like we did with the XC8-T. I've got just enough gas in this thing. I'm gonna check the oil in this thing really quick, make sure I haven't lost too much hydraulic oil from this leak. I've got the head for that coming tomorrow. I'll get that changed out. It's pretty easy. And hopefully that'll keep that from leaking. So when I first got this thing, I had to replace those heads. So they're about 2.5 years old. So those things don't last forever. But yeah, I think that's it. Everything I wanted to cover on this thing. I really didn't have a list, but this thing is a monster. And I'll be using the XC8-T for some things too, more of my mowing and maintaining jobs where I'm mowing grass and doing bush hogging work. That'll be sort of the XC8-T. That's going to be its ballpark. And then when I have more bigger material doing underbrushing and, you know, cutting bigger material, that's going to be sort of the specialty for this thing. So I've kind of got some different tools in the toolbox now to use for cutting brush. So I'm really excited to see how this thing does, see if it's actually, you know, lives up to the hype, being more powerful than the XC8-T and how it cuts. So let's hop in and run over here and see if we can't cut down a pine tree. All right, so here's the pine tree we're gonna take down. Pretty good size. That's probably 30 feet or so. And it's got a pretty decent size at the bottom. Again, I don't know exactly what that is, but it's pretty decent size. Give you a comparison. That's my hand. So we'll cut it off and we'll see how this thing does. That's a decent pine. Hopefully we can mulch it down. Let's go. right, well, there's not much left of that. Wow. Yeah, some pieces here and there, but not much left of that tree. Not gonna be putting that back together. I mean, there's just nothing but wood chips. I got the tape measure. Let's see what this tree came in at here. What do we got? I can GoPro and tape measure. That's every bit of an 8-inch pine right there. Wow, man. And it didn't even had hardly any trouble with that. I can tell such a difference just from running that XC8-T for so long. It definitely does not have the head speed. I can hear the blades when they hit. They just don't hit with the speed that the XC8-T does. But the amount of power and torque that those blades have when they hit something like that, I mean, it just, in the machine, it doesn't even feel like it slows down. Like, it doesn't bog, it just boom, hits it and just keeps going. Wow, that's impressive. I can definitely tell a huge difference in the power. It just has so much more power to push through that bigger material and take it down. Whew, that was I didn't really know how big that was at the bottom, but it was every bit of 8 inches. I wanted to measure it, and that's impressive. Very impressive. And I mean, it didn't even hardly blink at an 8-inch pine. I mean, I have no doubt that thing could do a 10-inch pine without much difficulty. I mean, it might take some time, but it's not going to hurt that thing at all. I mean, I know it's not, they technically don't rate it for 10 inches, but I don't think it would have much problem. So that's really nice. Two other things, and I didn't notice this until I hooked it up. The mounting plate on the back, see how much more angle it's got going this way forward? This thing, you can tilt this thing back almost vertical when you tilt it back, and that's why I wanted to show you at the end after I mulched that up. I brought it over in front of the GoPro. You can tilt that thing a lot further back, so when you're lifting it up and you're kind of pancaking stuff down, you can tilt that back and the material is going to go down into the ground instead of back towards you a little bit there. So that's really nice. That's another big thing about this over the XC8-T that I like. The other thing is, again, with that upgraded motor, the old one I can only run 27 gallons a minute on the high flow, so I can only run this thing at about 75% throttle. That can handle the full 33 gallons a minute that this thing kicks out. So I can run this thing with the high flow, full throttle, wide open, no problems. And that was full throttle. That was me wide open, 33 gallons a minute, spinning that thing up. So that's really nice. I've got that extra power, extra flow to run that head, so I can only imagine what that thing would do with that motor with something pushing 40 to 45 gallons. I mean, you guys do the math on that, because that's only 33 and it went through that like it was nothing and didn't even slow hardly. So that's really cool. I'm excited for this. I hope you guys are. We're gonna hopefully see a lot more of this thing in the future, God willing. You know, I can keep working and keep doing what I'm doing because I love it, and this thing is just so cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions about this thing, hit me up in the comments. If you're wondering about the XC8-T that I've got, and you're new to the channel, check out the video right before this one. I got a new flywheel for that thing, and goes over all of that. It's an older model. It's 2018, so the newer models are completely different in a lot of different regards as far as the design, the aesthetic design, and some changes that are a lot better. But if you got any questions, check that out. And if you got any questions or want to know what the difference between the XC8-T, roughly speaking, and this XC8-T, check out the video prior to this one. So I really appreciate everybody watching. Thank you guys, and more stuff to come soon. So hopefully I'm working on a project later this week, going back down to where we cut those ditches, and we're gonna be doing some work. So stay tuned. I'll check you guys later.